Well, I think when you look at the series of policies that have come in so far, pretty much all of them are growth negative in the course of the next 6 to 12 months. The
Mm.
clampdown on immigration is reducing the potential growth rate of the U.S. economy, and substantially so, like basically moving it from 1 to 1.5% labor force growth to essentially zero and maybe slightly negative. If you look at tariff implementation, which is in the short term effectively a tax on consumption, that certainly is starting to add up to be a meaningful drag on the economy. And then, there's some ambiguity about what Doge and other tax and fiscal policy is going to be ahead, but the direction certainly looks mostly in one direction, which is figuring out ways to cut spending. And even though, um, you know, uh, profligate spending and undesirable spending and waste might be good to cut. It is, the flip side is it's someone else's income, and that is a negative for, growth ahead.
Okay, so here is the Atlanta Fed GDP uh, now cast. So this, I mean, it's basically it's still positive territory. Is my point, right? They're not. The government is not projecting negative growth, and I wonder if you agree with the assessment that it's now 3% real GDP growth into Q1 2025 for the remainder of the year. I mean, does 3% make sense to you?
Yeah, well,
By the
it's
way,
very
three
early
percent
days.
3% real GDP implies kind of like a 6% nominal GDP if you take 3% inflation. Just FYI, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The Atlanta Fed GDP estimate is very early days for one first quarter data that we have, and so I probably wouldn't get so focused on that. On a backward-looking basis, the economy has been growing at 2 to 3% real, and pretty much all the data that you look at through the fourth quarter and early first quarter aligns with that. I think the real question is what are the likely fiscal effects ahead. I mean, just take a simple example of labor force growth going from 1 to 1.5 down to zero. That effectively is almost direct cut to potential GDP growth in the economy and a potential growth rate in the economy. So that's a good example, a simple example of where the fiscal policy ahead is not aligned with what the growth has been in the past. And so I think that's really where the disappointment could set up. Right now, equity markets, economists, everyone's expecting something like 3% real growth in the economy in 2025. That is already priced into the markets. So the question is, are we going to do better than that? Uh, and how are we going to do better than that, particularly in an environment where fiscal policy is likely going to be a drag ahead?